Okay, so me and Eva, we're going to be the ones that are giving you the feedback today for your project. So first of all, we just want to say a massive well done to all of you guys. It was really great reading your project. We could tell that everybody put a lot of hard work and effort into it. We know that it's such a hard project, especially for most of us. We're in our last semester and it can take a lot of energy, and you guys did really, really well with it. So well done. Just wanted to ask, has anybody of you all had the opportunity to read through our feedback that we've given you?
We did.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I did not read through the feedback yet. Taylor, have you?
Yeah, I read through it today, and there's a few things that we can fix. There's a few things that the professor has already told us
Okay.
that we worked on. So, I mean, it was really good quality feedback. So we appreciate that, you guys.
Okay, perfect. So I'm just going to hand you over to Eva now. She's going to start with the first bit of feedback for you guys.
Yeah, so as we touched on, the requirements for this manual were really, really lengthy. And for us, definitely confusing when we started. We definitely felt a bit lost when we were reading all that purple and blue text at first. And the part when we first started to feel a little bit more cohesive and understanding of the project was when we kind of consulted with each other and as well with the professor. So our first critique of your manual is that there were some formatting and content inconsistencies within your manual. And in order to resolve this, we would recommend further consulting with the professor if you haven't done so already, and as well with your other group members as you're finalizing the project. Since it is a group project, there's lots of difficulties that can pop up with that, but we really recommend working together to do group edits and consult and give feedback throughout the construction of the manual. So there were a few things that kind of led us to believe that that kind of collaboration could be improved. So to get more into that, there were some different formatting throughout the paper within like ink color or the font size and indentations. There was a little bit of inconsistencies with the listed codes at the end for the different sections. And also sometimes there were different task lists used as opposed to like edition 4 as opposed to edition 5. There were some missing elements from sections for the rubric, particularly within roleplay and PSI. The lit review sections had references dealing with clients instead of the direct care staff. So I thought that that should be addressed, particularly because when you're working in ABA, it's going to require a lot of collaboration and a lot of attention to detail. So it's important to get that experience and learn how to be comfortable doing that so we can continue to improve. That being said, we found that there were a lot of things that we really enjoyed in regards to your adhesion to the rubric and you following the rubric, particularly the literature review in your PowerPoint and throughout your manual were really, really strong, and they were very cohesive to the matter that you were discussing. All of your content felt really, really supported, and you used a lot of sources that were recent and specific. Finding those recent sources was definitely a struggle for me, so I appreciate what went into that. Also, your literature review for modeling and coaching was all related to staff training, as opposed to how to use that training method with clients, which was fantastic. And we felt that your manual had a lot of cohesiveness because it consistently focused on practical application. It seems like with every section, you were using concise language and simplifying things to make it appropriate for trainees and really prioritize the success of the trainees throughout the whole manual, which is really the point of the assignment. So really, really well done with that. And I'm going to switch it over to Jenny for our second point.
Okay, just before we go on to the second point, is there any questions that you have about the first critique from Ava?
No, I'm glad you brought up the formatting, especially. That was something because we all put our own pieces in, and we did it in Google Docs. So when one of us would pull it out and modify it, it was really hard to keep everything with the same font. So I'm glad you brought that up because that's something we can go back and check once we download, before we submit it. So I appreciate you pointing that out because it's kind of hard to tell in Google Docs when you go in and look,
Yeah.
that everything is the same because we all kind of, when we wrote everything, and then some of us would go in and modify and check. So I appreciate that point especially.
Yeah,
That's good.
you guys also mentioned the differences and like the ethics codes that we had included at the end of each section and everything. And I know in particular, after my section, over and over and over, y'all just kept saying like choose one or the other, which is something that I wasn't aware of. So I really appreciate you guys pointing that out and letting me know that we were only supposed to use either the ethics code or the task list. So thanks.
Yeah, that's right. Because I did the same thing. Like I just understood the instructions to say that we should do both. But I think too, like I didn't realize we never discussed about, are you going to look at the 4th edition task list or the 5th edition? We just never talked about that.
Right.
I think we all just went off when we did ours and kind of pulled one and put it in. So that's also a good, yeah. I appreciate that feedback as well.
Cool. Just in regards to that, so what we did is we use Google Docs as well, but what we did is one person each time we had a submission downloaded the Google Docs document into Word format and then actually went through all the formatting, checking the size of the font, the color of the font and everything. So it could be useful for yourselves to just appoint one person to just do that before the next submission. We found that worked kind of really well with us.
Yeah.
And the same with the task list or the BACB codes. That was a question that we all had as well. We actually emailed Professor Robinson about that, and then she clarified that for us.
Okay.
And that kind of leads on to like our second critique. So basically, Professor Robertson was a real great resource for us this semester. So we often kind of emailed her any kind of question or any kind of concerns that we had. She also joined the Zoom meetings with us, I think 3 times in total. We just asked her to come on and we asked her all of our questions and just further clarification because the manual is very confusing and there was often times that we just didn't know what was required for us. So that's kind of the next feedback. So within the manual, there were some sections that had information that was listed for that section, but it didn't appear to be intended for that section. And there was also some concerns with your vocab section as well. So with the training and acceptability sections for both the group and the individual, there were some questions that were left off, such as the location of the training and social validity. And these are kind of important for us to know that those working under us to make sure that our training is acceptable. They also had a paragraph discussing measurement that seems more suited towards the treatment fidelity rather than the training and acceptability section. So it's important to know the difference between the two, especially as BCBAs in the field, so we can accurately determine acceptability of our training on others. And for the vocabulary section, so the idea behind this was that we were to define all the terms in our own words. So what we kind of found was that a lot of the definitions that you guys had put were copied and pasted from Google. So this was something that we had concerns with. It's fine if you want to do this, I guess, but they needed to be kind of referenced just so that you avoid kind of engaging in any kind of plagiarism or anything like that. But that being said, the positive of your sections was that the role play materials were developed and detailed for others to use. They were really great. The treatment fidelity section was great and a really cool way to measure that. And the material for the acceptability surveys had both positive and negative items listed on there, which was a great way to remain unbiased. It's a really good job with that. Now, oh, Megan's left a message. Yeah, so Megan's saying that for the vocabulary section, it was supposed to be in your own terms. So yeah, that would be feedback. So maybe you guys can change it. I know it's really difficult. Megan actually worked on the vocab section for us, and it took her a long time. And it's really, really hard to reword a definition in your own terms. Maybe that's something that you guys could have a look through to see if you can change that. So are there any questions for the feedback for this section?
No, I think that's good feedback. I appreciate that about the vocabulary. I think that's something we can definitely work on.
Okay, cool. So I'll hand you over to Eva. She'll give you the third critique that we have.
Okay.
All right, so our third point goes back to the rubric. Again, stressing that these sections had a lot of elements to address. And I'm sure looking back over our own manual, like we missed a couple here and there. So just to point out some concepts to be considered by you guys and discussed, particularly when working with new staff in the real world to just ensure proper training for better client outcomes. The coaching and feedback material had a lot of information on what it was and when to use it, but it needed a little bit more information on how to implement that technique. And this is definitely important in our fields just because giving feedback doesn't always come naturally to others. I know I've certainly had to put in a lot of practice. And so having an implementation technique handy can really help others to learn this process. Additionally, the client outcome section needed to discuss the reason for your choice of measurement, which was rate, and the treatment acceptability of the training. There seemed to be a little bit of a misunderstanding, as it seemed like you guys were measuring the trainer implementation of the BST. And while this could be really revealing to measure, it wasn't necessarily required by the rubric. So we would recommend developing content regarding the acceptability requirements that were outlined in that section of the rubric, which was more in regard to the trainees' acceptability. Last one, the section on choosing between differential reinforcement and non-contingent reinforcement was missing some of the info in the rubric. So there are some concepts such as motivating operations and some deeper discussion into extinction that I think that section could have really benefited from going in deeper. So I think going over those points, making some edits on those would really, really strengthen your manual. But regarding the rubric, there was definitely strengths that we observed. We were definitely struck by your client population section. It addressed all the bullet points and was very detailed, and it was also very well written and easily understandable.
Thank you.
When I was reading it, it felt like a really realistic population, and it was refreshing to, I'm someone that works with early intervention, so it was refreshing to read about a different population. So I was excited reading the age range of like 10 into adult, as well as the inclusion of other comorbidities such as epilepsy, and the inclusion of other therapy services with OT, speech, and even the equine therapy. It felt very, very realistic. So it seemed like you guys collaborated with that and applied a lot of your own life experience into that, which was awesome. And within your treatment acceptability section, a lot of the rubric was adhered to, as well as within the literature review and the function-based intervention sections. And again, attention to detail came up as a strength with your consistent references to client outcomes within your PowerPoint and your overview of NCR. Again, it seemed like you guys were really prioritizing the practical outcome of this intervention, which for us was definitely a strength within your manual. Do you have any questions on that?
I know that I can say, so I had section 1 that was talking more so about like the population and the qualifications for the trainer and everything. And I have worked in both like early intervention, and now I am working with the adult and adolescent population. So I did use a lot of experience with that to make it easier to, I felt like it was easier for me to navigate through it when I was using my own personal experiences. So I really appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, it was great to read about it, and it really felt like someone who had experience with it was writing about it. So I enjoyed reading about it.
Yeah, Kelly? And I appreciate about the feedback about the choosing between NCR and DRA, because that was one section that I worked on. So we can definitely go back and add more information about extinction and motivating operation to that to make it a little more in depth and talk about that stuff. So I appreciate that as well.
All right, great. If there's no other questions about that, then I will switch it over to Jenny.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So this is our last bit of feedback, and then me and Eva will just summarize our feedback for you guys. So the last bit of feedback is just about citing references. So I know it's very time consuming, and it is hard to do. We found it difficult, citing every single reference that we found and everything, and making sure that they're in APA format. But it is important that we remember that we have to cite everything that we cite, basically, so that we try and avoid any plagiarism. So as discussed earlier, the vocab sections needed some citations, or to be made in their own way, in your own terms. The PowerPoint seemed to be lacking some references as well. The PSI as well needed some more references to be put through. Now, practicing this will help us as BCBAs to make sure that we give credit where credit is due. So we need to be citing the references that we use. And this is something that is an ethical code from the board. That being said, though, the training method overview for the section was well cited, so really good job there. A lot of the references were really recent and applicable as well, and the overview of the NCR had great citations as well, so good job for you guys. Just needs a little bit of tweaking here and there, but other than that, really, really good job. Are there any questions for that feedback?
I don't believe so.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So we're just going to go into our summary now. So I'll hand you over to Eva.
Yeah, so I would just like to start off our summary by going over the strengths of the manual and the things that we really enjoyed. This assignment was based off of content, based off of an evidence-based intervention, and the resources and references that you used for NCR as well as BST, especially specifically for your population, just made your manual feel very strongly supported. It was clear to us that you took the time to research and find information that matched your population, and it felt very specific, and it seemed like it took a lot of consideration. And as a trainer reading your manual, I would feel very confident using the material that was presented. So this and other things made your manual feel very well developed, and it was very easy to read and follow. I think that you used layman's terms very appropriately throughout your manual, as well as within your PowerPoint and other materials. I think that you did really, really well breaking down more complex ideas for the trainees so that it was very approachable. Another strength that we observed was that the content of the manual demonstrated that you not only considered the implementation of the trainer, but you were definitely concerned with whether the trainees could actually apply the NCR procedure. And that concern of the practical use, we feel like added a lot of social validity to the content that you produced. And this was demonstrated throughout your manual by the inclusion of treatment fidelity checks, knowledge checks, and I really liked the mastery of the role play scenarios that you included, as well as the pre and post knowledge acquisition checks within your training as a whole. So that was all fantastic. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to turn it over to Jenny to summarize some of our constructive feedback.
Yeah, so I'll just keep this real brief. I don't want to kind of become redundant with what I'm saying. So overall, just have a quick check of the formatting and just put some references in, and then I think you're good to go. Yeah, that's pretty much all to say there. You guys did a really great job. It was a real pleasure having a chance to give you feedback, and thank you for taking the feedback so well as well. It's nerve-wracking giving everybody feedback. But you guys did a great job with the project, and yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. We
Thank you.
appreciate
Yeah,
we-
thanks.
it back.
Yeah, we do. No, I'm glad. It's always nice to have somebody else, because I think when you're in a group, everybody kind of looks at it, you know, you have your group mentality and you're like, okay, we're good with this. And so it's nice to see somebody else's perspective of what we, you know, put in there. No, I appreciate that. All right. Are you guys ready for us? Are we ready?